All right, so let's talk about the Cincinnati game. I don't want to, but we're gonna. And you're all gonna be here to go through it with me. Coming into this game, I think this was a game that at the beginning of the season was not one that we were like had circled on the calendar necessarily because we didn't really know how good Cincinnati would be, and we're pretty sure Iowa State was going to be pretty good, but we kind of assumed Cincinnati would still be bad or not great, anyways. Maybe better than last year, but not great. And after they beat Kansas, um, I still wasn't ready to like declare them an amazing team or necessarily, um, because I think I really because Kansas's defense is monumentally bad. So I wasn't really ready to go quite there as far as like, oh, they're a high end team, but they're clearly a team to be concerned about. And I would say, losing two of their top corners in the same week to season ending injuries sucks. There's no two ways about it. And yeah, they're also missing their kicker, which against Arizona, missing Kyle Conradi didn't matter. But against Cincinnati, you could argue it made a big difference because there was a number of drives where they could have lined up Kyle from 50 yards and they've been pretty confident that they were going in, and it makes the game a lot closer. But some of those drives you had to just kind of eat it, and you had to try to get the touchdown. Had to try to convert, and sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. And probably at least three or four empty drives inside the Cincinnati 35 could have been avoided had they had Kyle Conradi. So that injury was there. But in the end, I mean, so you look in the first half, Cincinnati is just running the ball constantly, just gashing for like 10 yards a carry, just run and pound and pound and pound and pound. And Iowa State has a couple early flags that are really uncharacteristic of of Matt Campbell's program, basically, procedure type penalties that they really don't get very often. They had some illegal formations. I mean, for what it's worth, the refs seem to be like they they didn't miss anything. I mean, they were calling penalties all over the place. It was kind of unreal how many penalties they were blowing for. I mean, I didn't see any. I didn't really see any penalties most of the day that I was really questioning necessarily. Like I think the ones they threw flags on were penalties, but it just I hadn't heard the whistle so many times that in one game before. But the Cincinnati offense was just moving the ball. They were doing whatever they wanted, anytime they wanted, and the offense was really struggling. The offense was really struggling early on. The penalties hurt them. They couldn't get the running game going. Rocco missed some really easy throws that he usually doesn't miss, and you're at 31 to I think it's 31-7 going in halftime. We're all like, well, this is 100% over. And yeah, but uh, then they go down and they get a score right before halftime, and they're going to get the ball right after halftime. So it's like, okay, well, if they can go score halftime score, we're somewhere. We're getting closer. We're marching in the right direction. The defense have been getting gashed all day. They've been finding room in the tons of room in the running game. Some room in the passing game. And you get to the second half, and the defense is much better. The adjustments they made were clearly working. Um, you know, the Cincinnati offensive line had a really good day. They have a good offensive line. I believe now I'm ready to declare that Iowa State has a pretty good offensive line. I know that's like heresy around here, but I'm ready to declare that Iowa State actually has a pretty decent offensive line. Um, but Cincinnati's offensive line had a great day, especially in the first half. Second half, they made some good adjustments. There were a couple key players for Iowa State had really bad days. Dominic Orange probably had, you know, what was he playing hurt because of the shoulder stuff from Arizona? I don't know. If he was, that would kind of make sense because he probably had one of his worst games as a full time player. Uh, I don't know about as a Cyclone because his freshman season. I don't remember exactly. He was kind of in and out his freshman season, but um, As a full-time player, you really over the last couple of seasons, I would say that was easily his worst game. He just was missing tackles. He was getting pushed around. Um, I'm inclined to believe that it might have been because of a shoulder injury or something, but either way, Dominic Orange having a bad game makes everything else a lot more difficult for the defense. Uh, Caleb Bacon had a decent game, but Carson Willich, holy cow, Carson was awesome against Arizona. He was really, really good. He was all over the place. He was making plays in the running game, and just over and over against Cincinnati, Carson got poor guy got trucked by the running back a couple times, and they were ugly trucks. And he just was out of position. He wasn't tackling very well. Drew Surge missed a bunch of tackles. There's a number of Cyclones on Saturday that just did not play well. Now, I do want to say that there were a couple that I thought did play well, and those were the corners. Now, I know early in the game, Trey Bell did give up that long completion along the sideline, but if you go back and watch it, it was really, really good. It's actually pretty good coverage by Trey Bell. If he had turned around his head a little bit earlier and jumped at it a little bit, made a little bit better jump at it, he probably would have been able to bat it down. But in the end, that was kind of just a really, really good throw at Brendan Sorsby and a catch by the receiver. It was kind of just a really, really good offensive play, more so than it was any sort of bad defensive play. Um, I will say though that the rest of the game, Trey Bell looked fine. I will say though that the other corner, Quentin Taylor, that came in. I mean, so he'll be one of the starters for this season. Cincinnati threw at him early, and he stood up to the challenge pretty much every time. I thought Quentin Taylor was awesome. He made some really, really nice plays. Made some great plays in one-on-one coverage. Especially they threw some jump balls at him that he defended really well. I thought Quentin Taylor did a really nice job. Unfortunately, the straw that broke the camel's back um, was the play in the beginning of the was it late third quarter, early fourth quarter. Cincinnati had gone 3-and-out a couple times, and then Jamison Patton lets up the deep bomb. They were on like 3rd and 18 or something like that, and Cincinnati, and then Sorsby took the snap and started kind of running out like it was just a QB power, like they were just trying to do something. JMO came up, receiver went behind him. That's all there was to it. That was what ended the game basically. But the second half, generally speaking, other than that one play, the defense did a great job. They forced a few three and out. They forced 3 and outs in a row, I believe. They recovered another fumble. The defense was doing its job in the second half. Had they done a better job in the first half, they wouldn't. The offense wouldn't have had to dig itself out of like a 3-score hole in the second half. But I credit does, like John Haycock deserves some credit for the second half adjustments. Granted, you really wish they would have had a better plan to start the game, but it does seem like the way Cincinnati was moving the ball, it seemed to me as though Iowa State was expecting Cincinnati to do one thing, and Cincinnati did something completely different. So, I mean, should go to Cincinnati and Scott Satterfield for coming up with a good game plan. They basically they did something we were not expecting them to do, and that's what it looked like for me in the first half. Eventually, it took a longer than you would have liked to adjust, but they did. Obviously did adjust and did eventually largely pretty much shut Cincinnati down. But the problem here is that in the second half, the offense was not good enough. Those 3-and-out drives, I believe, ended up in 0 points, including that fumble. Especially they got the fumble, and then then the Iowa State offense went 3-and-out really fast. And it was, Abu Sama had an okay day. I thought the offensive line did a good job, especially in run blocking. They kept Rocco upright. They gave Abu some decent room to run. He did kind of what he could. But just flat out, this was not a good game by Rocco. The caveat here is obviously that big hit he took. I think it was in the third quarter. Took a really, really big hit, and he went out for a play or two, and he came back in, which Presumably he went into concussion protocol, and theoretically he obviously passed, um, and went back in, and we credit to him for being tough as nails. You do kind of wonder if he got his bell rung pretty good, because there was some throws in the second half that he missed, that Rocco just doesn't miss. Healthy, composed Rocco doesn't miss some of those throws. The fourth quarter, Rocco's ordinarily, he is, you can set your watch by how reliable Rocco is in the fourth quarter. And he looked rattled. He looked, off speed. He was missing some throws that I don't know if it was related to that injury earlier, if he was like, initially looked fine from the concussion stuff and then started showing some signs later on. I don't know. But what I do know is that Rocco was uncharacteristically sloppy, frankly, in the second half. And it hurt. There was a I thought the receivers did a pretty good job not dropping ball. I think they didn't drop many, if any, passes. There was a couple of them they would tell you that they should have caught, but there's a couple. I think there was one in specific I'm thinking of. I think it was to Overby. It was either Overby or Townsend that it was. It hit him in the hands, but it was like a foot and a half behind his body type of thing. Like it was a tough catch. And Chase Soul almost, Rocco, he tried to hit Chase Soul on a crossing route and he threw it high and a little behind him. So Chase had to like jump up and he kind of almost caught it. But he kind of got flipped over in the air and stuff like that too. Um, it was not a good day from Rocco Becht. Not a good day. He Dominic Orange and Rocco Becht both need to be better if I would say it's going to win games. So that's kind of what it was. So Duke says one of the biggest things was also time management at the end of the game. So I would agree with you. I was not happy with how that game was managed. There was a number of times where I was taking, well, okay. So the score right before the half, uh, I want to pull these up on the side just to make sure I've got kind of my sequencing right. But the score right before half, they were still going to be down a ways, and they decided to go for two, which because at the time they were down 24 points, or they were getting like they were sorry, they had scored and then they were down 26 at the time. And you could either kick an extra point to go to 25, or you could go for two to get to 24. And um they were at 24. They scored, they could have gotten to 16 if they went for two. They could have got to 17 if they went for one. They elected to go for two and they got it. And so like, okay, this is interesting. So going into halftime, you're at 31-15. You're down 16, which is two touchdowns and two-point conversions. Some guy on Twitter tried to create one of the most pedantic arguments I think I've ever heard in my life. When I said, it could have been a one-score game, he says, to explain to me how you can get eight points in one score is like, well, in to people that know football, when you say the number of scores or the number of possessions, that is used interchangeably. Sorry, my hat is pissing me off. And a lot of times saying something is a number of scores or a number of possessions is they're used interchangeably, and he was being stupid about it. And I don't think I blocked him, but that was deeply annoying. But anyways, Iowa State was one possession down. They were two possessions down if you got 2-point conversions on both of them. They score coming out of halftime with and that puts them at, let's see. Yeah. That puts you at 22 to 31. Or it could have put you at 22 to 31. Or sorry. It could have put you at 23 to 31. Sorry, I'm getting this sequencing wrong. It could have been 23-31 if you go for two and you get the 2-point, so then it's still at 8 points. You're still at one possession down. Inexplicably, they kicked the extra point and stay down 9 points. You were already down 2 scores. You're already down 2 possessions, and you kick the extra point to go down 2 possessions. What are we doing? Go for 2. If you don't get it, you're down if you don't get it, you're down 10 and you're in the same exact place as you were before. You're still down 2 possessions. In the press conference today, Matt Campbell said they didn't want to chase points. That doesn't make sense because you chased points in the first half. Like, it was obviously not too early to chase points because you did it already. And maybe like in your head when you were doing this, you said like in the first half, you said, "Oh, let's just go for 2 just because it's kind of fun and we think we can get away with it." Sure, fine. But at that point, once you get that and understand that you're down 16 now, you have to understand you've now just created a situation in which you've potentially cut an entire possession out of the game as long as you keep going for 2 and keep making it. It's basic math. You shouldn't be able to look at that situation and say, "Hey, maybe we should keep going for 2. If we get it, we move down to a 1 possession game. If we don't get it, we're basically right where we were anyways." The only difference being that a touchdown and a field goal ties it instead of wins it, which at that point, nope, who cares? You're too far out for that to matter. Anyways, so they go down 9. Not the end of the world. It's weird management, but it's not the end of the world. Then Cincinnati fumbles the ball on an option. You get the ball, you're like, "Holy shit, this is great." And you go 3 and out, and it's uh, these ugh. There were so many times in this game that Cincinnati desperately, desperately wanted to give Iowa State the ball. Or they wanted to, or not just the game, but they wanted to give them the game. Um, so here's your drive summary in the second half. So you got a touchdown that first one. Great. 14 plays, 75 yards. Awesome. Perfect. Cincinnati fumbles it on their next possession. Iowa State turns it over on downs in 7 plays on the next drive. Then they force a Cincinnati punt, 3 and out. Awesome. What does Iowa State do? 3 plays for 2 yards. Run, incomplete pass, punt. Okay. Next possession. Cincinnati turns it over on downs on 4 plays. Awesome. Well, actually, it should be noted that that 3-play 2-yard drive was after Xavier Townsend elected to not field a punt, and it went down and down and down and down and down, and Cincinnati down at the 1-yard line. Listen, I love the potential of Xavier Townsend. I'm happy, generally happy with what he's given us so far at the receiver position. Now that he seems to be coming on, he's making some plays. Right now, his perform like up to this point in the season, his performance as a punt returner has been a net negative for Iowa State in a number of ways. He did have like a couple funky returns against. I think he had one against Arizona, I think, that he got like 10 yards on. Other than that, he has really not done anything. I would prefer that they get Aiden Flora back there until Townsend can figure out what the hell he's trying to do. Next play, so they force another 3. They force a Cincinnati turnover on downs. Next drive, Iowa State goes 3 and out because you go Sama run for 3, incomplete pass, unsportsmanlike conduct on Matt Campbell, and then they punt the ball. Cincinnati punts it again. They eat a 15-yard penalty. Then they get a 13-yard run. Then they get a 5-yard penalty. Then they throw an incompletion. Then they get another 5-yard penalty and a 12-yard run. Then they punt it. Defense is doing its job. And Iowa State tries to go down the field, turns it over on downs in 9 plays. They burn 4 minutes to go on 9 plays for 48 yards. That drive ended up weird because Abu Sama ran the ball on 3rd down and dove, and he kind of like kept himself off the ground and dove, and I thought he was ruled like way short. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I could have sworn he got it. But then they line up for this QB sneak, and inexplicably, the QB sneak they're running is out of like a single back formation. Everybody and their grandma knows the sneak is coming. You're sneaking directly into Dante Corleone, one of the best defensive linemen in college football. Why on earth? I mean, sneaking there isn't necessarily inherently a bad play call there. But why would you not line up in your Maryland eye sneak and have guys that can push Rocco through? Why would you not do that? That's crazy to me. Anyways, so you turn it over there. You're still down 9 points. Um, and then Cincinnati gets the ball. You stuff them, they eat a penalty, and then there comes uh, the third and long pass to end the game, basically. And now you're down 16 points again, which was infuriating at the time because the entire thing was like, hey, we can get this thing to 8 points by scoring and going for two and getting two, and then Cincinnati scores again, and now you're just right back to 16 points. So then it erased it erased the negative impacts of not going for the two earlier because they just gave up another touchdown, which was a little infuriating because then that math didn't come into play, even though it wasn't like it was objectively like just the wrong call to do. I would say then drives down the field, which is great. They got the ball with 6 minutes left, but they took 4 minutes to run 13 plays, which is way too long. There was times where they were just running the play clock down. Didn't make any sense. They moved the ball pretty well. Um, but and then they somehow Cincinnati they do the onside kick, and it's the worst onside kick in history. They force a punt from Cincinnati. They should have arguably been able. They obviously did get hosed by losing a timeout earlier in the game on the new rule about it's a new rule intended to design to prevent teams from faking injuries to stop the clock. But the giant hole in the rule that Iowa State found was if you're actually trying to keep moving and you don't want to have you don't like want to have this, you want to keep moving. And they spot the ball and then the guy goes down with a cramp because it was super hot out there. They just made Iowa State eat a timeout. And had they not made Iowa State, take the timeout, they could have gotten the ball back instead of getting the ball back with like 11 seconds or whatever it was. Instead of getting the ball back with 11 seconds, they might be able to get it back with like 40 seconds left, which is enough time to go down and potentially try to tie this game. Now, the end of the last little 11-second drive there was maddening to watch. Not because I think like Iowa State was gonna go with I don't think they were destined to go down and score. But what they didn't do was anything that would help them, that would give them a shot. With Rocco's arm, if you get to the 50-yard line, you're in range for him to take a shot down at the end zone. At least the 50, even the opposite 45, you're probably in the neighborhood. But the 50-yard line, you're well within Rocco's range to throw that ball. And they could have gotten they took over at the 35. If they can get 10 yards, you can throw a Hail Mary. Cincinnati's playing way deep off coverage, and they throw a pass. They have Ben Bramer over the middle of the field, and Rocco just flat misses him. Just a bad throw. Just completely missed the throw. Had had Bramer caught it, got up past the first down, and then went down, they could have spiked it and got another shot at it. Okay, you missed it. You've got 6 seconds left on the clock. They're playing super far off, like 15, 20 yards off of the ball. You absolutely have time to throw it to like Abu Sama on the sideline there, have him catch it, run another 10 yards out, run 10 yards and get out of bounds with 1 second on the clock. And then you can take your heave. But instead, they threw a little crosser thing to Chase Soul, who then pitched it back to Ben Bramer. It was a very nonchalant, who then pitched it back to Ben Bramer, who just kind of like jogged upfield and then just kind of whoop, just kind of meandered out of bounds. Uh, so in the press conference today, Taylor, I think it was Taylor Mauser, said that it was a miscommunication. Ben thought he had more time on the clock. Uh, uh, Fair enough. I like that. That explains it, but it doesn't really excuse it. Like that is a reasonable enough explanation. Like if Ben just forgot he thought he had more time, type of thing. Like sure, that would explain why he just kind of walked out of bounds. But why? How? There's 11 seconds on the clock when you start the drive. How are you not looking up at the game clock saying, okay, we've got 11 seconds here. The first play happens that's missed. You need to look at the game clock and say, okay, this is how many seconds we got left. And I understand that, like, once you're in a play, your internal clock speeds up a little bit, or you're either slow, it doesn't necessarily line up with how real time is going. But I tell you what, that little sequence there, even if there was like almost no shot that Iowa State was going to really have a good shot at scoring there, not even taking 11 seconds and all the field in the world to go get like 10 yards to give yourself a chance at a heave. And you just didn't even get close. The execution in critical situations there towards the end of the game was just mind-boggling. The onside kick was maybe the worst onside kick attempt I've ever seen. I'm not going to get on Chase too much about that. He probably has literally not practiced that play. That would ordinarily be a Kyle Conradi play, but Chase Smith was kind of thrown into it, and they just had to do something. He like they probably sent him out there. He's like, I don't know, go figure it out, see if we can get the ball or whatever. And he tried something, and it just didn't even come close to working. Um, it's not his fault. Um, but this was not the best day. The defense in the first half was the problem. The second half, it was the offense. And then, late in, middle of fourth quarter and on, it was, I mean, frankly, the biggest failure was the coaching. Rocco missing that throw to Ben Bramer on the last drive, kind of half sealed it, but there was so many times before that where they could have done something. I thought Taylor Mauser tried to get a little too cute on offense a couple times. There's a few times where he was a little bit too married to running the ball. I thought that was, in most games, I feel like Iowa State has a coaching advantage on a lot of teams, especially because you got Taylor Mauser and Matt. They're Iowa State can win games just by out coaching the other team. They've won plenty of games by out coaching the other team. And they did it against Arizona. They did it against Iowa. They did it against Kansas State. Iowa State likes to win games by just out coaching the other team. This game was not a good game in terms of out coaching the other team. They got out coached. Period. I mean, no two ways about it. It is what it is. Because of this, now, obviously drops to 5-1 and 2-1 in the conference. Fortunately, all the goals in front of them, as far as getting to a Big 12 title game, all those are still in front of you. Granted, you have a lot of injuries to deal with right now, so it's it's a little bit dicier. It's not quite as simple as just saying like, oh, like one loss is survivable. You can still do anything you wanted to, type of thing. That is true, but you have work to do. You've got a lot of stuff to clean up. You got to hope some guys get healthy. You got to hope some guys are healthier than like that they get healthy. One of the big losses, I think, in the game, Abu did a good job for the most part. When he was asked to be the primary back, I thought Abu did a good job. But losing Carson Hansen hurt a little bit. There was a couple times where like Carson Hansen's running style would have really benefited them on some of those third and shorts. And he went down with a concussion earlier in the game. But it sounds like it's I mean, just like with any concussion, we're going to keep monitoring him. If he's good to go Saturday, he'll play. If he's not, then he's not. Like I don't think they're going to throw him out there early if they don't have to. Abu's they're going to. My guess is that they're prepping this week. They're prepping Abu as though he's going to be the bell cow back on Saturday, which could be a big opportunity for Abu, especially if he puts together a really good game at Colorado. And you want to get Carson back as soon as you can, but concussions are just kind of one of those things that they just sometimes you're good in a week, and sometimes it takes a month. Just kind of is what it is. Uh, Dominic Orange, hopefully it was just a bad game and it wasn't like a shoulder thing where it's easily fixable and we know he can play a lot better, and it's not just a like his shoulders fucked up and now it's just going to be fucked up the whole season. He's just to figure it out. Um, you hope it's not that, but you know we will see. Uh, the big question mark for me is Rocco. Is Rocco okay? I mean, I can't imagine they would have sent. I mean, they wouldn't have sent him out. They could not have sent him out there on Saturday if he didn't like pass his concussion protocols and all that. But sometimes the concussion symptoms set in later on. Where he can pass during the game and be pretty much fine, but then late fourth quarter and after the game, he's got headaches and he's whatever. You know, I I hope he's okay. I mean we all do obviously, but like assuming that Rocco is fine and that he just kind of got his bell rung against Cincinnati, I expect Rocco to be better against Colorado. Uh, it's just kind of a few of these guys need to get healthy. I mean, John Williams and Jeremiah Cooper aren't coming back, but I think Trey Bell and Quentin Taylor both did a pretty good job. I think Quentin Taylor was awesome. I think Trey Bell it was really just that one play that he missed. Um, but going forward, I'm not too worried about either of those two. I think they both showed that they're plenty capable. I thought David Coffey in the few snaps he got, he kind of got bailed out later in the game on a PI, but it wasn't like a bad one necessarily. He was pretty much just hand fighting with the receiver, and that's just kind of what it was. Um, but they've got to get better against Colorado. I mean, Colorado's a winnable game, but they but Slater is a mobile quarterback. He throws a lot of picks, but Slater is a mobile enough quarterback. They've got some players. They're certainly not a team you can just walk into Boulder and win that game without. They can't play another D+ game and try to win that thing. It's just not going to happen. So you need better late game management, all that. But hopefully these injuries start subsiding a little bit. Um, if they can win this game, get into the bye week at 6-1, give yourself a shot to get a little healthier. Then maybe by BYU get Kyle, maybe by BYU you get Kyle back. Hopefully whatever's going on with Dom Orange can fix itself a little bit. Hopefully you get Carson back. There's a few guys that are dinged up that you could stand to get healthy again. So get into the bye week. If you get to the bye week at 6-1, you can kind of reset, regauge a little bit. But